Big shot liars from all them foreign countries. From a feel about 1,000 or so entry. In 2 days, he boiled down and leave just 3. I had me eye on liar the lion, because I know he does come with some good ones.
6:34 in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, no lie, West Indies are now 61 for 5 in reply to India's 649 for 9 declared, coming towards the end of day 2 of that first test match in Rajkot. But let's shift to something else, which many people might consider to be a similar type disaster, depending on how you look at it, as far as the budget presentation of 2018-2019. Well, the finance minister triumphantly said that they did it their way, they did it our way, in referencing Frank Sinatra's famous song, which we gave Sparrow's version to the following morning. But let's hear what the Congress of the People have to say about it. We have the leader of the Congress of the People, Carolyn Seepersad-Bachan, who was a former energy minister in the time of the People's Partnership Administration before being replaced by Kevin Ramnarain. Ms. Seepersad-Bachan, thanks very much for joining us. Good to have you on the program this morning.
Special good morning to you.
You were part of the march that was started from Pointe-à-Pierre on the first day.
Yes.
Why? Was that just political opportunism?
No, this is because we express solidarity with the union, because I think over the last 2 to 3 weeks, we have spent a lot of time in the public domain, going through the figures and analysis with respect to the closure of the refinery. And we do not agree with the closure of the refinery, mainly because of the implications for the economy of Trinidad and Tobago and the social fallout. Let me just say, in my humble view, I think we have debunked the many arguments that have been put out by the government. This issue that there is a $3 loss per barrel of refined products. We have been able to illustrate that the company has positive cash flows. They are carrying their own debt. They pay their interest charges on both the 850 and the 750, and they are also making their own capital repayments. So I think it was important that, that we clear the air on the issue. We have to understand the purpose of value added. Because if we have...
before you continue, and because we're going to separate all this, because we're talking Petrotrin and then we'll talk about the wider budget, but obviously Petrotrin is one of the major issues.
In the budget.
But correct me if I'm wrong. If we were to just say dollars and cents, earning or losing, is Petrotrin, the institution, the refinery, is it losing money or is it earning money for Trinidad and Tobago?
It is.
Bottom line.
It is generating positive cash flows.
No, what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so it will record. Okay, so yes, it does record a loss on the refining and marketing part, but those are non-cash adjustments. They are really what you call book losses. It's because you have taken a write-down on an asset, but it's not an expense, like if there's flows of cash.
So you're saying that Petrotrin is not a drain on the coffers of Trinidad and Tobago?
You have never one day, government has never put any money into Petrotrin. They do not carry the interest payments for the debt. They do not remake any capital payments towards that debt. And that's what I wanted to make clear. Even when Minister of Finance in the budget presentation, he spoke about these other guarantees that had to be issued to back some working capital. That is not money coming from the government, it's just a guarantee for credit facilities that they needed. And my problem with that is, you see, since this narrative has started and since the announcement of this closure, the image of Petrotrin has taken a beating. Even
people have had a good image of Petrotrin before?
But it has gone worse now. International investors are onshore. Look at what has happened to the bonds. The bonds themselves, right, the market reaction to that bond is because, again, too, with the government's announcement of the closure, Moody's, when they put them on a downgrade, they said the reason why we're putting you on a downgrade, we don't understand what's happening here. We don't understand how this bond is going to be paid back if the refinery is closed. We don't understand what this new model is in terms that government has in mind for this upstream E&P company. And this E&P company cannot carry the debt. Because what you are talking about right now is money has to be borrowed to be able to modernize the exploration and production. And when you go to modernize an exploration and production company, it will take years before you start seeing the benefits or the rewards of that investment.
Ms. Seepersad-Bachan, I appreciate all of the different technicalities, some of which may be far more complex than we may be able to understand. But what I'm trying to get, when we hear, for example, of Petrotrin being indebted to the tune of billions of dollars.
And
When we
that's
hear that,
correct.
for example, there's a payment that is coming up next year
Yeah.
of 600 million US
850.
that has to be paid. Who is paying that?
Right? And that is why I'm saying, now let me just say
No, but I'm just asking, who is paying that?
that Petrotrin.
Well,
Petrotrin is
okay,
carrying
where's
that.
Petrotrin getting that money from to pay that?
They're generating it out of their margins, out of their gross profit position. They have been paying their interest charges on the 850 and the 750. And yes, there is a bullet payment coming up next year. But the company and the government, since as far back as 2010, we were talking about how we were going to deal with that 850 million bullet payment. It's a payment that all in one.
Yes.
Okay, the whole capital. And we talked about, we put a sinking fund in place. Okay, for some reason that sinking fund disappeared after 2010. But whatever
When
it
you say
is,
for some reason, I mean, how does something like that just disappear?
well, you know, the issue here is, right?
No, but you can't just say that. You can't just simply say for some
Okay,
reason.
what I'm saying, and
a
as
sinking
Minister
fund
of Energy
disappeared.
in 2010, we had put plans in place to
Yeah.
deal with that payment of 850. That was how many years ago? This is
Yeah.
2018.
Yeah.
8 years ago. For example, the plan was that those plants that were being built, and I want to say this is a relatively modern refinery.
Yes.
Most of those plants are less than 10 years.
Not a 100-year-old
Yeah,
refinery.
No.
Right.
And it uses modern technology. Those plants itself, as they were coming on stream in 2010, 2011, because you remember they started construction, and yes, the government, I would say there were cost overruns. Yes, it was a lot of debt, very high interest payments on those debts. However, it was negotiated. But the issue is that these plants, as they were coming on stream, we said, listen, right now you are generating a profit from the refinery. What we want is when these new plants come on, those revenue streams coming from those plants, 50% should go back to the direct cost of the plants. The other 50% goes into a sinking fund to fund that, to be able to pay this 850 million bullet payment. That fund continued. Now, I'm not sure what happened after that with that sinking fund. But my point is, so, okay, the decision now has been taken to shut down the refinery,
Yes.
refining and marketing. And the issue is that the government has been giving the impression is that the upstream is the one that's making all the money, and the downstream is the one, which is the refining and marketing, is not making money. And that they were, when we have been able to analyze and show it's the other way around. Because one of the things that has been causing a very narrow margin, and even with that narrow margin, or which I will say $8 to $10 per barrel of refined product, you have a very high transfer price for a crude, indigenous crude, which we produce, which cannot fetch that price on the international market.
One of the other narratives being given by the government is that basically Petrotrin is a drain on foreign reserves, because a lot of foreign reserves has to be used to purchase oil to refine at a loss anyway. Is that correct?
Well, it's not at a loss, as I just told you, because you do have a margin of $8 to $10 for every barrel of refined products. And if I take off the operating costs, and I take off the overheads, and I take off, I will still have a cash flow of $3 and something cents per barrel. And when I pay my interest charges, which comes out about, say, $2.40, I still have a positive cash flow. Coming back to that point, that this foreign exchange, I think you're going to be in a worse situation, because what you are going to be selling your crude oil at and having to import this 25,000 barrels of refined product, when you look at the high market prices for that, okay? Secondly, you have to take freight and insurance on board to bring that to Trinidad and Tobago. You have to pay a trader, you have to pay for terminaling, and all of that will be in US. When we work the figures, I think you're going to have a net outflow of foreign exchange. If you're talking about the other situation now with a downstream, the refining, I keep hearing, at least you're breaking even in terms of foreign exchange. Don't forget what is happening. When you import foreign crude oil, you are producing a certain amount for the local market. So you are getting paid in TT dollars. The refinery is getting paid in TT dollars for that refined product. If you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, but you see, you had asked me before we went on air, what is my view on so I said, well, I tell you quite frankly, I don't care. Because all I care about is taxpayers' dollars being used to prop up Petrotrin. And could you just, before we take a break, could you just answer that question for me? Are taxpayers' dollars being used or have been used over the years to prop up Petrotrin?
The other way around. You get to, no monies have been provided. Nowhere in any budget I've seen any monies going towards Petrotrin for anything. What you have is you have a LPG, for example, almost $200 million US a year. Petrotrin loses on LPG because they keep a control price, okay, in terms of the market. Petrotrin also...
But who covers those losses? For example, World GTL, this whatever venture that went
was a very
bust
bad
and so
decision.
on, and all these different things.
Exactly.
Who covers those losses?
So the Petrotrin has been absorbing those losses.
So the taxpayer, there's
no taxpayer has absorbed any loss. What the problem is with this decision, once you close the refinery, and this is the question I've asked, did the Minister of Finance put into that debt figure $850 million US and said the remaining $250 million outstanding on the 750? Because once the refinery stops operating and no revenue streams coming in, it's the taxpayer that is now going to have to carry the interest costs, and it's the government that's going to absorb that debt.
We'll just have to take a break, and we'll continue with Carolyn Seepersad-Bachan, leader of the Congress of the People, as we try to make sense of the Petrotrin situation in relation to the budget presentation made by Finance Minister Colin Imbert. That was on Monday, and indeed the budget debate will get underway today. We'll wait to see how that unfolds, but we'll be back right after this break.
Best fisherman, catch a fisherman wide 80 feet in span. He had to tighten the boat and swim back to land to get his brother Eric to give him a hand. You hear live?